I am the general manager of emerging markets for IBM. My responsibility is the business performance and the investments that IBM is doing in about 149 countries where we operate. That means all Latin America, all Africa, the Middle East, all Central and Eastern Europe, all Asia, and Australia. By complement, if you want, for those that like mathematics, it would be everything without the United States, Western Europe, and Japan. And the reason why we created this organization is because we believe there is a huge growth opportunity ahead of us in these economies and these societies, and there is a green field for development and creation of wellness for the societies, for the people, and for the economies in general. The other reason why I am here is not only because I was graciously invited, it's because we as a company, we are growing. Our business in emerging markets is about $20 billion a year, and it will be $40 billion a year, rounding numbers, by 2015. And the number one challenge we have in my company to succeed in this objective is you, is talent, especially executive and leadership. Because business in the emerging markets, actually business in every part of the world, is local. Leadership should be local. It should have an international mindset, but should be local. So I have an interest here, which is I wish some of you after this speech are interested in IBM, because we are very interested in you. So that's my introduction. The other thing I want to say is that lecturing about IBM being 100 years old here in the St. Petersburg University, which is an institution that has 278 years, is particularly an interesting matter and special for me. I have been in IBM about 35 years, 1/3 of the history of IBM. I joined as a very young man, for the records, very young, while I was pursuing my university degree in South America. Since then, I have worked all over the world in different leadership positions. Along the way, I have gained, I think, an idea of what it means to work on an increasingly globalized world. And certainly, I do have a very strong point of view on how IBM has evolved into a modern corporation, which is what we believe IBM is today. Let me begin in the year 1962. Tom Watson Jr., which is who you see in the picture, was the IBM chairman and the son of the founder. He stood before another great university, like I feel I am today, addressing an audience of future leaders, as you are. IBM at that date had recently reached 50 years of operation, and Tom was invited to offer his thoughts on what half a century of corporate life had taught to his company, and what other leaders could learn from that history. He began with a very striking statistic. Of the top 25 industrial corporations in the United States of America in 1900, the top 25, only 2 remained on that list in 1961. 8 had disappeared or were absorbed, and the remaining 15 had slipped far behind. As Tom Watson said, figures like this help to remind us that corporations are expendable, and that success, at best, is an achievement which can always slip out of hand. So now here we are, 50 years later, and IBM is celebrating its centennial. So what have we learned in IBM after 100 years of history? Well, one thing we have learned is that Mr. Watson was right. Success is fleeting. And just to use the same statistics, of the top 25 companies on the Fortune 500 at the time of Watson's lecture 50 years ago, only 4 remain alive today. More importantly, our history told us something about the source of any business or institution's continued success and impact. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. What about success? And what about impact of a corporation? There are 3 lessons from IBM's history that we can take from IBM's history, really. First, an organization must change as the world economy changes. Second, an organization must adapt in response to changes in technology. And finally, third, an organization must always stay true to its core values in face of a changing world. I want you to note how the word change is part of every single lesson. Sometimes it means you must change, but other times it means you must resist change. And the hard part is to know how to differentiate one from the other. People who are familiar with IBM's history are often struck not merely by our longevity, but by the fact that we have continually changed. Actually, we started as a company making clocks, scales, and cheese slicers, in addition to punched card tabulators. After that, we made typewriters, vacuum tube calculators. Well, we did magnetic tape drives. The first disk drive was invented by IBM. The memory chip, Fortran. Some of you still remember Fortran. Fractals, ATMs, cash machines, mainframes, mini computers, personal computers, supercomputers, services, software, business analytics, and so on and on. So you may say that we have not done the same thing for 100 years, which is true. But from the start, we had one thing in our minds, one truly very important thing. We had a global mindset. This slogan, World Peace Through Trade, dates to 1924. It was the idea of Thomas Watson and partially what inspired him to rename the company International Business Machines. Since then, IBM has gone from operating in one country to more than 170. Yet even today, in some respects, we are still on the journey to become a truly global enterprise. 10 years ago, IBM identified several shifts that would play out in the incoming years. Big shifts, changes that will test the core of every company in our industry. First, globalization will reorder the economies and the markets. Second, a new computing model will sweep aside the PC-centric one. And finally, our clients will have entirely different expectations for technology, not just as a tool for productivity, but as a tool for transformation. Leaders at IBM knew that we needed to seize upon these shifts and turn them to our advantage. We needed to adapt. We also knew that doing so would require another massive wave of transformation. And at that time, we were just coming out of IBM financial turnaround in the 90s. Let me show you how our organization model has changed. For many years, IBM operated as an international corporation. Our operations were headquartered in one country, the United States of America, and we had local offices in different countries that took direction from New York. In the middle of the last century, we became a multinational. This meant we had a parent corporation and miniature versions or copies of ourselves in country after country. That was a good way to operate in face of the big challenges that were in place at those times in trade and all around them regulatory barriers. Today, we believe that the world is smaller, flatter, and smarter. This has changed the market opportunities we pursue and the way we go after them. Our operations today are globally networked like never before. This shift is also changing how we work, and it will force us once again to reset our worldview and how modern corporations see their role in that world. We are moving to something new and far more systemic, what we call a globally integrated enterprise. It is changing the way we run the company, from sales and marketing to human resources and research. For example, we have significantly distributed our operational centers of gravity. The global team I lead on emerging markets is based not in the US, but in Shanghai, China, where I live. It is about where you locate expertise and decision-making, not concentrated in corporate headquarters, but globally networked. And it is about where you integrate your company. For us, the point of integration is no longer your headquarters office, but where the client is. We have also changed our understanding of the skills, relationships, and responsibilities that IBMers must assume to make this globally integrated world work. Let me give you one example that describes all of these shifts in the area of leadership development. In the past, we prepared future leaders of a multinational through overseas assignments, typically assignments of 2 years, and typically in big markets. I did this myself. I lived in Brazil for several years, then in the US, in Spain, later in Switzerland, and now I moved to China. As a management development system, it was expensive and limited in scope to very few executives. In a world where growth is coming increasingly from emerging markets, and where IBM's global engagement is far wider and closer to the ground than in the past, multinational approaches are no longer the best. We need to create a whole generation of global professionals and global citizens, and the model of overseas assignments won't scale to that. So 3 years ago, we launched an experiment we call the Corporate Service Corps. And it is not modeled on earlier forms of executive training. IBM's Corporate Service Corps puts together diverse teams of high-potential IBMers from around the world and sends them for a month to communities and cities in emerging markets such as Ghana, Philippines, Turkey, and Vietnam. They work in communities with the local organizations and local leadership to jumpstart their economies and to make their cities smarter. And when they come back, they share what they have learned with their colleagues through social media. The results so far have been highly encouraging. Not only we provide this experience to far more IBMers, thousands rather than dozens, but these targeted interventions are having a transformational impact, both on local communities as on the IBMers themselves. Many say it is one of the most meaningful experiences of their lives. In fact, it is also helping us to gather invaluable learning about the reality on the ground in these emerging markets. It's strengthening IBM's societal relationships and it's surfacing new business opportunities. So, changing product lines, changing organizational models, and changing leadership development are all ways IBM has adapted and continues to adapt to changes in the global economy. Let me turn now to our second lesson from IBM history. Over the course of the last century, information technology has gone from a set of tools to an industry, to a science, and to a pervasive part of the modern world. That is why it has become something that every leader must master. And I don't mean learning how to tweet or use an iPad, both of which we all know how to do. Information technology today is not just a back office engine or a never-ending flow of consumer gadgets. Technology is the way we see the world, including those dimensions invisible to the human eye. It is how we map and understand the dynamics of the world's complex systems. And it is increasingly how we decide on what action to take and when to implement it. Indeed, technology now pervades every aspect of the way our world works. The systems and processes that enable services to be delivered, physical goods to be developed, manufactured and sold, everything from people and freight to oil, water, electrons to move, billions of people to work and live. It is easy to see how major shifts in technology have impacted our world. A most profound impact has come from information technology. 100 years ago, punch card tabulators changed the way we measured everything from railroad rolling stocks and retail inventory to population census and social welfare programs. 50 years ago, the mainframe automated the back office and created online transaction processing. It transformed banking, insurance, retail, and the proper airlines. 30 years ago, the personal computer enhanced our personal productivity. 15 years ago, the internet gave us access to information, commerce, people, transcending time, space, and geography. Today, there are nearly 1 billion transistors per human. There are 4 billion mobile subscribers, and there are 30 billion RFID tags produced globally. These devices and sensors give us, for the first time, real-time instrumentation of a wide range of the world's systems, natural and man-made. Our planet isn't just instrumented, it is also interconnected. If you see this in another way, we can see 3 different eras of computing time. First was the tabulating era. Then came the computing era. And now we see emerging the era of what we call smart systems. Today, there are 2 billion human beings on the internet. But most importantly, systems and objects are speaking to one another too. And this is what some call the Internet of Things. Think about the prospect of 1 trillion connected and instrumented devices and objects. Cars, cameras, roadways, pipelines, even food and products. All of this is creating vast amounts of data. And through advanced analytics and ever more powerful computing, we can turn this data into insight. The smart systems era is producing a new generation of computers. You may have seen a few months ago when IBM put a powerful new computer called Watson to compete on a TV game show called Jeopardy! Watson is capable of answering natural language questions, and it is the product of 100 years of innovation at IBM. It is a window into innovations of over decades to come. By offering a new way for humans to interact with computers, Watson is a new paradigm. Systems that are designed for specific workloads that can learn from experience. The possibilities with smart systems are endless. IBM is paving the way for computers to serve in healthcare as doctor assistants. Actually, Watson will very soon pass the medical exam and be certified as a doctor. In banking and financial markets, in investing advisory services, in retail, to hear the global interactions consumers have about products, services, and brands, and in government, enabling agencies of all kinds to more effectively service their citizens. All over the world, we see forward-thinking leaders who are mastering these new capabilities. They are applying all that intelligence to make systems, processes, and infrastructures more efficient, more productive, and more responsive. You will miss this if you see technology merely as a succession of gadgets, websites, or the next big thing. It is much more. It is the way our world works. The point is, today's leaders, those like you who want to keep moving to the future, have an obligation to understand technology, not its mechanics, but its implications, and how to incorporate it, and how do you build your organizations, not just your processes, but the people's culture. And that leads me to the third lesson from IBM history. The world has been going global for centuries, but that will mean very different things in the 21st century. To be a leader in the future, it will mean thinking globally and not only about geographic boundaries. Again, let me quote Tom Watson from 1962. He said, "I firmly believe that any organization, in order to survive and achieve success, must have a sound set of beliefs on which it premises all its policies and actions. I believe that the most important single factor in corporate success is faithful adherence to those beliefs. And finally," he said, "I believe that if an organization is to meet the challenges of a changing world, it must be prepared to change everything about itself except those beliefs as it moves through corporate life." Let me repeat the last line, which I find fascinating: to be prepared to change everything about itself except those beliefs. And Tom Watson was not talking here about ethical precepts. For him, a company's beliefs were about its identity, what makes it different, unique, what shapes its decisions and behaviors. If you could codify and sustain that core, it would ensure that the organization or company that you lead remains unique and differentiated decade after decade. In IBM's case, the continual need for forward-looking progress is intrinsic to our business model. IBM's value proposition is to create and provide innovative solutions to our clients, solutions they cannot get from anybody else. And because the frontier of what is truly innovative keeps moving, that compels us not to sit still. It is a constant reminder never to define ourselves by the things we make, no matter how successful they are today. Time has taught us how essential this balance is between what changes and what endures, and how we have to continually revisit it for new generations. In fact, I would argue that the need for a foundation of belief and values is greater today than ever before, because change is faster than ever before, and the arena is larger and more complex than ever before. In a globalizing world, with work spread across vast networks of organizations and individuals, people need something that holds them together, that provides a touchstone for their actions and decisions wherever they are. This is why we decided nearly a decade ago that returning IBM to greatness required getting back in touch with our DNA. So one of the first things that our CEO, Sam Palmisano, did was to launch an effort to re-examine our core values. The question was, how do you do this? Sam knew we no longer live in a world where the chairman can simply lay out a company's basic beliefs. Employees today are super smart. They are highly independent. They are even cynical. You cannot come down from the high and tell them, these are your values. So IBM took a different approach. In 2003, we came together online as a global population over 72 hours in what we call a jam. I guess we would call it today social media. It was messy, it was passionate and contentious. But in the end, IBMers embraced a new set of values because they themselves had shaped them. I truly believe that none of our work since remaking IBM's portfolio of products and services, globally integrating our company, even launching our Smarter Planet agenda in the middle of the global recession, nothing would have been as effective or sustainable if we had not first gone back to basics, back to our roots, back to the foundation of our culture. Let me give you an example of what these values mean. In 1981, we introduced the IBM PC, and in 1992, the very popular ThinkPad. By any measure, ThinkPad quickly became the most recognizable brand for IBM, and arguably the only brand that touched individuals, millions of people. For all of these reasons, the idea that we would divest the PC business was for many just unthinkable. Yet, we knew that the emerging computing model would only accelerate the commoditization of the PC industry. And that's not where we wanted to be. We want to continually move to the future by going where the value and profits will be the greatest. And that's why IBMers shape the value that reads, innovation that matters for our company and for the world. And that's why we decided our PC business would have a better future in the hands of another company, which turned out to be Lenovo. The point I want to make is that decision would have caused a deep turmoil inside the company, and instead of that was embraced, not merely on the basis of economics and strategy, but because it was consistent with our values. At IBM, we believe we are innovators. In 1981, the PC was an innovation. 20 years later, it had lost much of its differentiation, and it was time to move on to the future. Of course, every great company holds unique beliefs, but translating those beliefs into action, that is what separates the company from all others, and that's what keeps those beliefs alive. And that translation happens not in the realm of strategies and processes, but of people and culture. In this light, IBM's history can be seen as a century-long journey to create and continually recreate a unique culture. Indeed, this was probably Thomas Watson Sr.'s most enduring contribution to the world. The notion that an organization can and must undertake the intentional creation of a culture based on its beliefs or values and not based on what you would see on the interests of a charismatic or superstar leader. We have spent 100 years seeking to remain faithful to what makes us IBM. Even when technologies shift, even when the global economy moves to a fundamentally different basis, it is about how you bottle up what makes any organization distinctive, what makes IKEA, IKEA, what makes Apple, Apple, or for that matter, what makes the Graduate School of Management at St. Petersburg University the Graduate School of Management. As Tom Watson said in 1962, we need to do this for our organizations, whether in business, government, academia, or anywhere. His words said this is necessary to meet the challenges of a changing world. So if we put all together, what does IBM history teach us about the modern corporation? I would suggest that its lesson is this: if you want long-term success, you have to manage for the long term. If you take this seriously, if you make long-term thinking a management approach, then it produces some clearly identifiable behaviors and choices. It determines how and where you invest and allocate resources. For example, it takes a kind of institutional patience to invest in research and development. The payoff, if it ever comes, can take years. It shapes your view of talent development. To develop talent that can lead the enterprise generation after generation takes money, time, and patience. And this is not just about people at the top. It is about developing future leaders broadly and deeply throughout the organization. Long-term thinking shapes the way you see your company's role in the industry and in the society. And finally, managing for the long term tells you how and when to take decisive actions. It is not a mindset of slow and steady or being risk adverse. On the contrary, building for the long term is not for the weak and faint-hearted. It often compels the enterprise to act when it isn't obvious, to place bets that seem risky in the near term, and to combat corporate and people's inertia even when times are good. This was the mindset that led IBM to launch our Smarter Planet agenda in 2008 in the middle of the crisis. The constant in all this is what the enterprise values and believes. And to keep that front of mind, corporate leaders have to set the pace. For me, I come to work every day with a mindset that IBM will outlive me. I come to work every day with a determination that I and my colleagues will pass on to future generations of IBMers and to the world a better IBM, a better one than the one we inherited. So let me close by telling you that we believe that the measure of any entity, any business, government, university, or other institution is at the end what its impact. How the world is different because this institution existed. Despite the many challenges we face, we believe at IBM that the forward-thinking individuals, communities, and companies and countries of the world can build a smarter, a more secure, and a more sustainable planet. As leaders of tomorrow, I do hope you share my excitement for the opportunity we all have in front of us. It is up to us, and that's why we're here, because it's up to us as leaders of institutions, business, and the world in the future. Thank you very much for your time.